The Brooklyn Bridge, an icon of New York City. The bridge spans the East River between the boroughs of Manhattan and Brooklyn. Opened on May 24, 1883, the Brooklyn Bridge was the first fixed crossing of the East River. It was also the longest suspension bridge in the world at the time of its opening, with a main span of 486 meters and a deck 38 meters above mean high water. The bridge was originally called the New York and Brooklyn Bridge, or the East River Bridge, but was officially renamed the Brooklyn Bridge in 1915. The Brooklyn Bridge is an emblem of 19th century engineering because of how innovative the use of steel as a large-scale building material was at the time. It uses a hybrid cable-stayed suspension bridge design with both vertical and diagonal suspender cables. It was the first bridge suspended by steel cables. Its stone towers are neo-Gothic with characteristic pointed arcs. Originally, the bridge was designed to house two double-track carriageways and cavalry at the ends, two tram tracks in the center, and a raised pedestrian platform. It currently consists of 6 lanes for cars, 3 in each direction. Who built the Brooklyn Bridge? Proposals for a bridge connecting Manhattan and Brooklyn were first made in the early 19th century. At the time, the only travel between the two cities was by a few ferry lines. In February 1867, the New York State Senate passed a bill that allowed the construction of a suspension bridge from Brooklyn to Manhattan. In April 1867, the cities of New York and Brooklyn were authorized to subscribe to $5 million in capital stock, which would fund the bridge's construction by the New York and Brooklyn Bridge Company. The bridge was built between 1870 and 1883. The chief engineer appointed in 1867 to build the Brooklyn Bridge was John Roebling, a German-born American civil engineer. He was an experienced engineer on wire rope suspension bridges, as the ones in Pittsburgh, Niagara, or Cincinnati. Unfortunately, he died in 1869, just before starting the works. Washington Roebling, John Roebling's 32-year-old son, was then hired to fill his father's role. He acquired higher education in engineering at the Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute in Troy, New York, and worked with his father in several suspension bridges. In 1868, Washington became assistant engineer on the Brooklyn Bridge and was named chief engineer after his father's death in mid-1869. But very early at the beginning of the works, in 1870, he suffered a decompression sickness contracted while working in the caissons for the bridge piers, deep beneath the river's surface. It affected him so severely that he became bedridden. Thus, her wife, Emily Warren Roebling, was driven into the forefront of engineering. Emily Warren Roebling is known for her contributions over a period of more than 10 years to the completion of the Brooklyn Bridge. She had studied mathematics and science, and she began taking down copious notes on what her husband said remained to be done with the bridge. She also began studies of her own on the technical issues, learning about the strength of materials, stress analysis, cable construction, and calculation of catenary curves. She took over much of the chief engineer duties, including day-to-day supervision and project management. For the decade after Washington was confined to his sick bed, Emily Roebling was dedicated to the completion of the Brooklyn Bridge. Emily and her husband jointly planned the bridge's continued construction. She dealt with politicians, competent engineers, and all those associated with work on the bridge, to the point where people believed she was behind the bridge's design. Emily Roebling was the first to cross the bridge by carriage at the open ceremony in 1883. The excellent works of Emily Warren Roebling as engineer were recognized by the American Society of Civil Engineers. A plaque in the Brooklyn Bridge, raised in 1951 by the Brooklyn Engineers Club, commemorates her contribution to complete the construction of the bridge. Upon completion of her work on the Brooklyn Bridge, Roebling shifted to supporting several women's causes. She also wrote several essays and argued for greater women's rights and railed against discriminatory practices targeted at women. She continued her education and received a law degree from New York University in 1899 at the age of 56.